There are things carved in stone and echoed in song that no textbook will dare to teach. One such truth lies not in Africa alone, but stretches its fingers across the Indian subcontinent. Walk into temples in Tamil Nadu, gaze at the frescoes of Ajanta and Ellora, or visit shrines dedicated to Kali and Krishna. You will see them. Gods with black skin, dreadlocked hair, broad noses, full lips, divine images that mirror the face of Africa. So why do Indian gods look African? This is not a rhetorical flourish. It is a serious question backed by historical encounters, religious memory, art, and living tradition. The answer begins, quite strikingly, with a European eyewitness who had no incentive to lie. In 1288, the famous Venetian explorer, Marco Polo, visited the Pandyan kingdom in South India. What he observed defied the racial constructs that would later dominate colonial thinking. He wrote, quote, "The darkest man here is the most highly esteemed and considered better than the others who are not so dark. Let me add that in very truth, these people portray and depict their gods and their idols, black, and their devils, white as snow. For they say that God and all the saints are black, and the devils are all white. That is why they portray them as I have described." This is not a YouTuber's theory. This is Marco Polo, a renowned 13th century European whose observations remain recorded in historical archives. His account shatters the myth that blackness has always been marginalized. In this part of ancient India, blackness was sacred. It was divine. And these divine images were not just painted in temples. They were encoded in philosophy, carved in ritual, and passed down in the chants of Vedic memory. These weren't merely dark-skinned representations, they were African. To understand why, we must go deeper. According to historian Dr. Clyde Winters, Ethiopians have had very intimate relations with Indians. In fact, in antiquity, the Ethiopians ruled much of India. These Ethiopians were called the Naga. It was the Naga who created Sanskrit. A reading of ancient Dravidian literature, which dates back to 500 BC, gives us considerable information on the Naga. The Naga, often portrayed as serpent beings, were no myth. They were black, dreadlocked spiritual figures, founders of India's mystical knowledge systems. Dr. Winters continues, "Even the legends of India revere the black race that laid the foundation of their civilization, and the holiest books of India also affirm that enlightenment came from Ethiopia. In fact, the first god of India is a dreadlocked black man called Shiva." Now pause. Shiva, the supreme deity of the Hindu Trinity, the destroyer and transformer, often painted dark blue or black, with locks piled on his head like matted rivers of spiritual power, a drum in one hand, a cobra around his neck. Who does that sound like? To some researchers, Shiva is a cultural twin of African gods, like Ogun or Shango. He dances like the Yoruba Orisha of thunder. He meditates like Nile Valley priests. The iconography is too similar, too specific, to be coincidence. And Shiva is not alone. Krishna, often referred to as the Dark One, is also depicted with midnight blue skin and curly hair. Kali, the fierce mother goddess, is jet black and adorned with a necklace of heads, imagery common in African spiritual traditions, like that of the Congo and Dahomey. But how did Africans arrive in India? The answer lies in ancient maritime trade and migration, not slavery as often assumed. African navigators, Nubians, Ethiopians, and East African seafarers crossed the Arabian Sea long before the European age of exploration. Even European travelers confirmed this presence. In the second decade of the 16th century, the Portuguese traveler Armando Cortesão wrote, "The people who govern the kingdom, Bengal, are Abyssinians, Ethiopians. These men are looked upon as knights. They are greatly esteemed. They wait on the kings in their apartments. The chief among them are eunuchs, and these come to be kings and great lords in the kingdom. After the king, it is to this people that the kingdom is obedient from fear." This was not marginal influence. Africans, especially Ethiopians, were warriors, governors, spiritual leaders, and royalty in Indian kingdoms like Bengal, Gujarat, and the Deccan. The spiritual impact of this African presence was monumental. According to Dr. Vulindlela Wabogo, quoted by historian Runoko Rashidi, manifestations of the Buddha in Asia are black with woolly hair. They all appear to be Egypto-Nubian priests who fled Egypt. The priests carried their spiritual knowledge, but lost much of the scientific knowledge for obvious reasons. The well-known aspects of Buddhism and its companion, yoga, are all simply Egypto-Nubian priesthood practices, meditation, and the belief that one could attain a godlike state if the soul was liberated from the body through knowledge and denial. So here is the bigger picture. What modern Indians worship as yoga, what global Buddhists see as paths to enlightenment, and what Hindus depict in stone and chant in Sanskrit, all have deep African fingerprints. They are echoes of a global spiritual tradition whose heart once beat from the Nile to the Indus. Today, if you visit India, you'll find small temples where locals worship pitch-black idols, not because they forgot to paint them, but because blackness is holy. In these rural shrines, the gods are still black like Krishna, still feared like Kali, still revered like Shiva, still alive with the soul of Africa. Yet the mainstream historical narrative remains silent on this. But the silence is cracking. Afrocentric scholars, researchers, artists, and seekers are telling the truth long buried under colonial amnesia. A truth your channel now has the power to echo. That Indian gods look African because they were modeled on African people. That India remembers, even if the West forgets. That the spiritual blueprint of Asia owes a sacred debt to black civilization. And that the divine, in many parts of the world, still wears African skin. There are temples in India where the gods' images are not simply painted or sculpted. They are living testaments to an ancient and unbroken lineage of connection. The rhythm of Africa pulses through these places, woven into the very stone, the music, and the prayers. More than just a coincidence, these divine depictions, these powerful black gods, are reminders of a time when the world was more interconnected than history would have us believe. A time when the sacred spaces of India and Africa were one, sharing in the same worship, the same knowledge, and the same deep understanding of the divine as embodied by blackness. India and Africa, through their mutual and long-standing relationship, remind us that blackness was never just confined to one corner of the world. It was always, and remains, a central, sacred thread woven into the world's spiritual and cultural fabric. This legacy continues in India today, where black deities stand tall in temples, revered and beloved. Their power and presence are felt in the air, in the chant of the people, in the dance of their priests and priestesses. The reverence for these deities is a reminder of a time long ago when the gods were not just figures of worship, but reflections of the greatness of Africa, its spiritual knowledge, and its ancient culture. These gods remember. They are not just echoes of the past. They are a living testament to the power of African civilization and the profound influence it has had on the development of human culture across the globe. They remain a beacon for us to reconnect with a past that has been obscured by centuries of colonial erasure. And now, as we find our way back to these truths, we must remember that the divine face of Africa is not just a thing of history, but a living, breathing presence that continues to guide and inspire. The gods are still black, and they will forever be a reminder of Africa's eternal legacy. Thanks for watching this episode. Do remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and look out for the next one on Africa's great civilizations.